Hi and welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. I don't quite know why I've decided to start a new video at like midnight while I'm in bed, but I've been meaning to start this video for a few days now, and this video is basically going to be reading a friend's favourite books. So I have a couple of books here. Just a quick note from Editing Beth here to say these are not necessarily my friend's favourite books of all time. They are some of his favourite books of all time, and I think it is safe to say that both The Wasp Factory and Espadare Street do mean a lot to him, but they're not necessarily like his favourite books of all time. And they are both Iain Banks books. I would say that we have both have like overlapping and wide reading tastes, and that we both pretty much read anything, but our favourite books are quite different, I would say. So he is currently reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, my favourite book, and I am currently reading The Wasp Factory by Iain Banks. So I have The Wasp Factory here, and I also have Espadare Street, both by Iain Banks, and he's lent me those copies to read, and I thought it would be a fun and interesting video to read something, I wouldn't say outside of my comfort zone, but something I'd have maybe not picked up myself, but I'm reading because somebody that I know really loves it. So yeah, I'm currently reading The Wasp Factory, which is, it's weird to say that it's a young adult book, but I kind of do see it as a young adult book because we're following this, I think he's 16 years old. So it says on the back actually. Frank, who is just 16, and he is an unconventional soul. This book is very, very dark, and it's following him, and he's killed people, including his younger sibling, his young brother, and it's very dark. And it's following, like, I actually, we were talking about this earlier, and I said that it's visceral. You feel everything in this book. The writing is like very intimate with what he is like as a character, which I really like. And I feel like you can picture everything crystal clear because you just feel like you're really wrapped up in the story because the writing is so visceral and so intimate with everything that he's doing, and it's basically, I would say, like a character study so far. I am this far through, about 70 pages, I think. It's not too long. It's like 184 pages, I think. So I am nearing the halfway mark. And yeah, it's unlike anything I've read before, and I'm very intrigued to see where it's going. I feel like it's gripping me, and I want to see if and when it changes, and if we have a redemption arc here. So I am very intrigued. But yeah, we were talking about this earlier, and I was saying how dark this is, and my friend said maybe I should have started with Espadare Street because Espadare Street is very different. But I'm kind of interested to go from The Wasp Factory to Espadare Street. I know that he read this one, I think, in a weekend, so I'm very curious, and I thought it would be good to do a video with these books to see how I find them and talk about them when it's like something outside of what I would usually read. And an interesting kind of experiment, and I think it'll be interesting also to see my thoughts going from this, The Wasp Factory, to Espadare Street, so we will see. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hello. I finished The Wasp Factory this morning and oh my god. What the f***? This was insane. Like, I kind of knew that something was coming, but I could never have predicted what was coming. This was so interesting, and the ending really got me. I could not get over this ending. I finished this morning. I probably had about 50 pages left this morning, and I was very into the story. Like, I have been really wanting to pick this up and really intrigued for a while now, from quite early on in the story, and I knew that you just get this sense of like impending something, and I kind of just hoped that the payoff would be good, and the payoff was probably even better than I expected. It just surpassed everything I expected in terms of, I feel like it's so difficult to do an ending like that to a book like this and to get it right and to get it so that the reader doesn't feel disappointed, and I certainly did not feel disappointed. I felt like I was so surprised by this. It's such a study of human character in a really messed up way, but it also kind of takes everything that the book has said and turns it on its head by the end of it, which I think is just fascinating. And yeah, it really impressed me. Honestly, I felt like I went into this really not knowing what to expect, and I genuinely really enjoyed it. And it is messed up, and I would not read this if you're faint-hearted, and I wouldn't read it if you don't get on with some heavy content. Like, look up the contents of this book if you're going to read it, because there is some stuff in here that's very, very dark. Doesn't personally affect me too much, but I wouldn't go into this without kind of knowing more of that. But yeah, I genuinely really enjoyed it and thought it was, I thought it was brilliant, honestly. And I really liked it, and I'm really excited to read Espadare Street, because my friends told me that it's very different to The Wasp Factory, and I'm very intrigued by going from this into Espadare Street, knowing that it's apparently quite different and not got any of the darkness that this book has. But also, having loved this book, I think reading Espadare Street is going to be fascinating. So yeah, we will see. I have other books that I really should dig into, get stuck into, but I'm probably going to pick up Espadare Street next, because I just want to, I'm very intrigued, and I kind of want to see where that goes, especially after finishing this, and yeah, really, really enjoying it. This could be a 5-star, honestly. It really has left me with that feeling of like, what have I just read, but in the best way. But yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. it was really good, and yeah, I'm very intrigued by what Espadare Street's gonna be like. So yeah, I will start that maybe tonight, to be honest, and I will catch up with you when I have read some of Espadare Street. I literally just finished Espadare Street, and I thought it was time to give you my thoughts and feelings, my like immediate thoughts and feelings after finishing it. I'm very sleepy, and I've literally read like half of this book tonight, to be honest. I've been on sprints with Alex, and I think I've read about half of this book today. I really, really enjoyed this. I really did. it's really not something I would pick up again, same as The Wasp Factory. It's not something I generally read, but I just really enjoyed it. It kind of reads a bit like a biography, which is kind of the point. It does say like it's a biopic, and it's weird actually because I was talking to another friend today at work about she's currently reading Daisy Jones and the Six, and that is kind of a similar theme. Like, it's about a band, and it's written in an interview format, but it is kind of a fictional biography about this band, which is kind of similar. All of this is following definitely just one person rather than a whole band, whereas Daisy Jones, from what I remember reading it years ago, follows like the whole band itself and a few different characters and is told through an interview format. This one is told from like one person's point of view, but it does have kind of some similarities in terms of like the few books that I've read that may be kind of similar in a way, but because this is following one person's kind of point of view, but it does read very real and like kind of like a diary entry in a way. It's quite slice of life, and there's a lot of scenes in this that are just small moments in time rather than kind of big I don't know what the word is, I'm too tired to kind of try and figure out what I'm trying to say, but rather than like it's weird. It's like looking over a long period of time but only looking at these smaller moments, which I really enjoyed. And I feel like for that reason you feel very involved in the story and quite comforted by it as well, because it feels so real. And I think it probably feels quite familiar because of that. It's very hard to describe how I felt about this. I didn't want to stop reading it, and I also didn't want it to end. Like, I wanted to pick it up because it felt very comforting to me, but I also didn't want it to end, and I feel like I am going to feel quite sad now it's over, and not really know what to pick up next, because I did genuinely get quite a lot of comfort from this book, and I find that quite interesting because I know that my friend who lent this to me feels the same way about this book, and it's a big comfort book of his, and I wonder how much I've taken of it being a comfort book for him. Has it then ended up being a comfort book for me? I don't really know. How much we kind of subconsciously imprint our thoughts and feelings on something like that. Like, we've also been talking a lot about music, and I don't know, it's like I've said this to him, but I think if a song means a lot to a friend, then it will also mean a lot to you. And I think this felt comforting for me because I know it's a comfort for him, but I also just genuinely felt very comforted by it. And the ending was so lovely. Like, I think you can see from the time lapse of me finishing this that I was smiling at the end to myself, because it is lovely. And once I got to like the 200-page mark, because this is like 250 pages, I just wanted to read the end and find out what was going to happen, and I just found it really lovely. And I did describe this book earlier as lovely, and I think that's maybe not something that a lot of people would use, like not a word a lot of people would use to describe this, but I found it quite lovely and quite quiet in a lot of ways, but in a really nice way. Like, it's not a loud big book, it's a quiet book full of small moments, but it's lovely. So, two very, very different books, but also in a way you can really see his writing throughout both of them as well, and this one felt quite familiar to dive into just having read The Wasp Factory, which is interesting because they are poles apart, which is crazy. But anyway, I'm really tired. I do need to wrap up this video now I've read both of these books, but I am going to give you like more of a wrap up, full thoughts and feelings on both of them, and a comparison when I feel more awake. So I will not end this video quite yet, but I will talk to you again maybe tomorrow about both of these before I finish this video fully. Hi and welcome to the end of this vlog. I wanted to end this vlog in daylight. It is barely daylight, so we are just going to push through it because I want to give you a kind of wrap up to this vlog, my full feelings on these books before I before I head off and finish this video. So it is the day after I finished Espadare Street last night and gave you my update on that, and I thought I would just come and, I don't know, talk about these two books, talk about this this vlog. It's been a really interesting vlog to do, and I know it's very different to things I have done before on this channel, because I wouldn't really gravitate towards either of these books myself, but I also think there's something really interesting about having a friend that you do read quite different things and you end up talking about your favourite books and they're very different, but you exchange them. And the friend who lent me these, I lent one of my many copies of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and he loved it and said that it's one of the best books he's read recently. So it works, guys. If you have a friend and you exchange stuff that you really love, I just think it's really interesting, especially when you do have different tastes, and I would not really pick up these things. And I think it's been super interesting, especially because The Wasp Factory, I think, has probably evoked one of the biggest responses I've ever had from friends and people I work with, in terms of if they see that I've read it or see me reading it, they were like, oh my god, you're reading The Wasp Factory, what did you think? I think it's just one of those books that really sticks in people's heads if they've read it, and they maybe also wouldn't expect me to read or pick up myself. So I think it's been really interesting seeing people's reactions to me reading this. I did also put a photo of it on Twitter, and I got a few responses from people there saying oh, you read The Wasp Factory, what did you think? I read it years ago and I thought this, or whatever. I think that's really interesting. But anyway, my thoughts and feelings on both of these, I guess. I genuinely really loved both of these books, and it was such an interesting experience to read them together. And actually I'm kind of glad that I read them the way around that I did, because I think it was nice going from the shock of The Wasp Factory and the darkness of it, going into the kind of lightness and comfort of Espadare Street. Not that Espadare Street is light, because it does have some quite, I don't know, dark moments as well, but it, as I said I think last night, it's also quite lovely and quiet, and I really like that. Going from The Wasp Factory is probably quite loud in comparison, and I thought that was really interesting. But also reading these back to back, you can really see Iain Banks's writing and how similar it is, even when he's writing very, very different things, which I also really enjoyed. Kind of seeing that carry across into the second book that I read, Espadare Street. So yeah, really interesting experience. I think I'm probably giving The Wasp Factory 5 stars just because of how brilliant it is as a book. I think it's so clever, and I think it's one that I just won't forget, and I think a lot of people don't forget, and that's why people have said to me wow, you're reading The Wasp Factory, or you've read it, and asked for my thoughts on it. I think that's why, because it just will stick in my head. And Espadare Street I think is very similar, as in the rating. I will probably, I don't know what to rate this at the moment. I feel like I'm still kind of deciding if it's up there as a 5 star. I think it might be a 4.5, but I did still really enjoy it for very different reasons than The Wasp Factory. Obviously it just doesn't have that shock factor, but I just got so absorbed in the story, and I just really enjoyed it as well for different reasons. So overall I think this has been a very successful reading experience, and it's just been a really nice thing to do as well. I think swapping favourite books with a friend, I would recommend it. It's really nice to have that experience and to be able to talk about your favourite books. So yeah, it's been a really lovely thing to do. So, but anyway, I'm gonna head off now. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's, as I said, not something I would typically read, so it is quite a different video than I would normally do, but I hope you've still enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed doing this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.